Welcome to a new review. Today we're going to take a look at the Security Force Archetype, including all the cards from Blazing Vortex and Lightning Overdrive, which are the three last cards that got revealed pretty recently. And it's a good thing, because I wanted to wait a few days until we were going to see these cards, but apparently we got them a lot more quicker than I thought we'll get them. So that's really nice. But before we jump right into the review itself of Security Force, I'm going to remind you the usual thing, that a subscriber a day keeps the depression away. So if you want to help the channel see more videos like this, I would really much appreciate it if you can hit that subscribe button and essentially share these videos around with people that might be interested. And we're almost into 2,000 subscribers, which is really cool. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for 2,000, but I'm very excited for that. And essentially every time I see the number grow, I'm also getting very excited and want to work on more stuff. So that's another incentivize for you if you want to see more videos like this. But without further ado, let's jump right into the review. So to start things off, we're going to start off with the Security Force Rappa Chiyomaru. Bleh. I don't know why I got stuck on that for a second. But Rappa Chiyomaru is a level 2 warrior, meaning that you can search her with Rhoda, which is already kind of nice. And essentially, she have an effect at the start that all of the Security Force kind of like share in terms of the baseline. And that is an effect that says if a monster your opponent controls face up a Security Force monster, not only themselves a Security Force monster, they're essentially applying a minor inconvenient-like effect to that opponent monster. In the case of Chiyomaru, is that she make the monsters that Security Force, monsters that your opponent controls that face a Security Force monster, this is going to be a mouthful, basically she make them only able to attack the monsters in the same column. So basically, if a monster face her, that monster can only attack Chiyomaru specifically. Or if a monster face one other Security Force monster and she's on the side, her floodgate effect will work, but you know that monster can only attack that Security Force monster. So that's how that kind of works, just to let you understand. But the main effect and the one that you care about for Chiyomaru, and that is the fact that as a quick effect, she's allowing you to basically banish a Security Force card from your hand, bounce her to the hand, and then special summon any Security Force monster from the deck except herself. Why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why. First and foremost, it's a quick effect. Really good. Secondly, you can bounce her to the hand to be useful for the next turn. Thirdly, she banishes a card, which is really useful with Platina. And fourth, she basically summons any ones that you want from the deck, which you have some higher level ones that you want to summon from the deck to activate their effects. And because of that, she's a 5-star card. She's basically a great starter, and you want to get her in your opening hand as soon as possible, because if you're able to get her into your field and then bounce her and then have another effect that like special summon her even during your opponent's turn and then bounce her again, you can get some like annoying, floodgate-like effects that could be some of them are actually okay. And also you get the fact that you get to summon monsters out of your deck, which is really nice to make your draws later better, and just flooding the board is always really cool. But that's pretty much does it for the best monster of the archetype, and now we're going to jump on to the worst monster of the archetype, and that is Professor Digamma. Professor Digamma is 1-star because he's a battle phase related, or should I say, battle position related card. Because on normal special summon, he can change a battle position to an opponent monster. Oh my god! Without any sarcasm now, this effect is terrible, let's be honest. It's an effect that should have been stayed on 2010 and not be on a monster in 2020, because this got revealed in 2020. And the other effect is that monsters your opponent controls that face up a Security Force monster cannot change their battle position as long unless it's by a card effect. Which is like, why? I don't understand that. If you would have said like, oh, monsters in defense position, for example, or in set position getting like minor negative effects because of this, I would say, you know what, that's fine. But because of the fact that like, oh, I'm just only changing battle position, which doesn't work on link monsters, and my effect could be interrupted by a card effect, and you can change the monster back, it's not really that useful. The only reason why this card is useful is because it's a psychic monster, and it's a level 3. So you could use this for emergency teleport, I guess. But I'm not really 100% sure you even want this card still. And now we'll move on to Security Force Orifice. And Orifice, he's basically your level 4 Cyverse monster out of 2. There's another one that is a Dark and a Cyverse, which I'm pretty sure some of you already know. And he and that one are pretty much good if you want to essentially have a mini Cynic mining package, because both of them can be searched by Cynic mining, which is really cool, giving you that consistency. But in the case of Orifice, his Floodgate effect that monsters that your opponent control that face up a security force monster, basically, they cannot be targeted by your opponent card effects. Meaning that if your opponent trying to target them to essentially improve the monster, or target it and then destroy one of your cards, or some of these kind of effects, they cannot activate that. But this is not really the best of the effects. The second one, is the better one, and that is said that if your opponent monster activates effect, as a quick effect, you do the same thing as Chiyomaru, as you banish a card out of your hand, and then, or security force card out of your hand, and then you get to destroy that monster, which is pretty nice. It doesn't depend on columns, it's pretty okay. I do wish, however, it was, negation as well, but I guess that would have been way too much powerful. But I guess it's still kind of like an interruption, so this card is kind of fine, and I'm going to give it 3 stars because, just the popping during the opponent's turn could be considered quite nice. Then we're moving on to the first big level out of the deck, which is like the high level ones that are higher than 4, and that is Security Force Gravitino. And Gravitino is a Stratos on Summon. Basically, normal special summon, you get to add a security force card from your deck to your hand, and then its Floodgate effect is also pretty cool, and that is monsters that your opponent controls that face up a security force monster, when they leave the field, are banished instead of sending to the graveyard or getting to the extra deck. So they're basically getting like a mini Dark Law / Macrocosmos kind of like an effect, or Dimension Fissure. I don't remember the spell one, I think, Dimensional Fissure, I think that's kind of like a more accurate representation. Point is, this is a Floodgate that is worth maybe want to have on the field because it can interrupt your opponent quite slightly. However, it's only going to get 4 stars, even though it's a Stratos and have a nice effect, is because of the fact that it's a level 5 monster. You cannot normal summon this without tributing something. And while we do have Chiyomaru and 2 other cards that are really good with this, which are, I forgot their name, I think it's Chase and Edge Laser, which we'll get to them, that can summon him out of the hand. He's still a little bit of like, because of the fact that, like I said, he's a level 5. So he's still good, he's still a 4-star, he's still very important, but because he's a level 5, he's a little bit worse. Then for the other high level monster, from at least Blazing Vortex, and the highest level monster currently for Security Force, that is Security Force Platina, or Platina, or whatever you want to call her. And she's a level 6 with a Floodgate effect that monsters that your opponent control that face up a Security Force monster basically lose 600 attack, which I wish it was better and would have been 800 or 1000 or half of their attack, because I think this is kind of minor and kind of just cute to just equal the 100 to the level, and I think it's not really that enough. But I guess it's okay going second. But the more important effect is that when she's normal or special summon, she gets to summon out of your banish zone one of your Security Force monsters that is not herself. And because of that, I'm going to give this one 3 stars, because of the fact that she's not as good as Gravitino to summon out of your hand immediately. Because if you want to get her advantage, you want to have a monster banished. And secondly, she not summon a monster from the graveyard, which is a big issue in my opinion. If she could have summoned a monster from the graveyard, I would say this card is a lot better. But she can only summon out of the banish zone, which is a lot worse, but I still think she's kind of nice. And because of that, I think she's like at least a 2 off. Some people might say even a 3 off. But I think Platina overall is just like a nice card. I love her artwork. I think she's cool. But she's not as good as Gravitino as a high level monster. Because of the fact that Gravitino on summon is always good, she does depend on some certain situations. So that's why she's a little bit worse. Then for the first monster from Lightning Overdrive, we have Security Force Dog Tag. And Dog Tag is interesting. At the first glance of it, I thought it was actually amazing. Then I read a part of his effect again and realized that he's not that good, and I thought he's trash. But then when I thought about this again, I think he's okay. I'm going to give him 2 stars though, because of the fact that both of his effects kind of suffer from one particular problem. The first effect says that if your opponent summon a monster, you get to normal or special summon, you get to special summon this card out of your hand. Which, that is the first problem. I wish this card would have been quick effect. If you control a Security Force monster, special summon this card from your hand. And specifically also I forgot to mention that you have to control a Security Force monster to special summon when your opponent summon a monster. So I wish it was a quick effect. Summon a security force. If you control a security force, summon this out of the hand. Why? Because A, it will allow you swarming during your turn. B, it will allow you kind of like dictate when you want to summon it during your opponent's turn, which is really, really important in my opinion. Then the secondary effect says that monsters that your opponent controls that face up a security force monster cannot activate their effects during your main phase. Meaning that it's a very, very nice way to break out your opponent's board in terms of like interruptions, but the problem is that only during your main phase, making this card a little bit worse than initially looks like. And I realize why they did that, because an effect like that could be broken, but I still think they should have made this a little bit better in terms of overall. I think Dog Chase is cool, but they could have made him a little bit better. I think it's still like you might want to run this just because it's a free special summon even during your opponent's turn, and kind of help you, like I said, breaking boards, because he could just be summoned to one of the zones that your opponent, like, you know, have a monster with a negation, and if they have a negate, they'll basically turn this off. But I still think like the first effect should have been a quick effect at the very least, and the secondary effect would have been just only specifically for him to turn off monster in his zone specifically to make him unique or something. I don't know, could have been done better. But for the last main deck monster, we have Security Force Edge Laser, which has absolutely helped the archetype quite a bit. While he is susceptible to Effect Veiler and Imperm because of the fact that on normal or special summon, he's allowing you to summon on Security Force from your hand in attack position, excluding himself, so it's a little bit susceptible to those hand traps. It's still the fact that he's able to get a monster out of your hand, which is really, really good. The secondary effect, which is monsters that your opponent control that face up Security Force monster cannot be used for Link 3 or higher, is not really that important, but it's still very, very nice to be there. It's a 4-star card, no-brainer, and that's the card that I mentioned that can be searched with Silent Mining because it's a level 4 Dark Cybers. Meaning that you can run a small Silent Mining Cybers package with it and Orifice, which is really nice. Then, for the last monster and the only extra deck monster currently, we have Security Force Justify. And Justify is pretty interesting. He's a Link 3 that points everything up. You can only summon it by using effect monsters, and you have to use 3, and one of them has to be a Security Force monster. But he has very, very interesting effects. The first effect is that something that you need to remember is that like the zones that he points to, you cannot summon monsters to them. Meaning, if you monster reborn this guy, and he points to both extra monster zones, you cannot summon any monster to the extra monster zone for you. So do understand that when you monster reborn him into one of these zones, because he's always going to point at least to one extra monster zone, and you can prevent him to point to the other one. So basically just point to the extra monster zone that you're not using. So that's to note about that. However, his other effect, which is really, really important and basically the most important aspect about this card, is that as a quick effect, he's allowing to target a monster your opponent control, negates effect, and basically move it to one of the zones that he points to. Unlike the rest of the Security Force monsters, he doesn't, stack on like only one zone specifically and activate his effect, only to the zones he points to, meaning that he wants to be in the extra monster zone. So if you don't have him in the extra monster zone, you probably want to summon a new one rather than like summon one out of your graveyard, because otherwise you cannot really point anywhere. His other effect is also really good going second, which that's what makes him good going second, is that he can banish any monsters that he points to when he attacks before the start of the damage step, which is really, really nice because meaning that you can just banish up to 3 monsters, which is really, really cool. The card is overall really nice, and it's get 3 stars. The problem with this card, however, is that it's a little bit harder to summon than you think initially, because it requires 3 monsters, and only when a specific thing happened, or like you're getting a really, really good hand, you're able to summon him, and then maybe also have like an interruption with him beside him being the only interruption. So he's fine, he's really, really good, but I wish we got like a 1-link-1 monster, or something that just helped to bring him out more easily. But he's still a very, very nice boss monster. That does it for the monsters for the Security Force. Now we'll move on to the spells. And for the Security Force spells, first off, we have the field spell called Security Force Bridgehead. And Bridgehead, on activation, allowing you to add any Security Force monster. And basically that means that you get 4 additional copies of every one of your Security Force monsters, because Terraforming is another copy of this, so 4 additional copies. Secondly, an effect that specifically works really well with Rappa Chiyomaru, and that is the fact that monsters that your opponent control that attack a monster in their same column as a security force monster, you basically allowing you to target that security force monster that is being attacked, and essentially make it not being destroyed by battle from that battle specifically. So basically, Chiyomaru that like lock your opponent to only attack in the same column really work nicely with the field spell, which I like quite nicely, and it's just essentially just making your opponent a little bit more of a harder time to just clear up your board. So Chiyomaru is a little bit better, and this one is a 5-star because it's a searcher and have a nice additional effect on top of it. Then we have Security Force. Basically, I think it's Standoff. I think the name of that is. This one is a pretty interesting one. As a quick effect, it's allowing you to basically summon a security force out of your hand or recover a security force out from your graveyard to your hand, and you can only activate one of these per turn, but it's a quick play spell, so that's really nice. It's getting 3 stars from me because of the fact that I am a little bit complainant about the fact that the secondary effect is not a grave effect, and only the first effect exists, because let's be honest, you're only going to use the first effect most of the time, and I think having the secondary effect to recover security to your hand should have been a grave effect to make the card a little bit better and just make the archetype as a whole a little bit more powerful, or should I say like a little bit more able to recover itself. But still, it's a very nice card. Then we have Security Force, the first trap, which I forgot her name. I don't remember the name of that one. I don't remember, actually. Sorry about that. But the point is, this trap specifically is a very interesting one, and only 2 stars because it's an interesting monster reborn that is not really that good. Because of the fact that specifically for this monster reborn to work, is basically it's a trap. Secondly, your opponent have to control a monster. And thirdly, you have to summon that monster that you target in the banished or in the graveyard to summon to that zone that a monster points to. So if you specifically do not summon it to a zone that a monster points to, you cannot really do anything with it, so it's kind of like really not that great. And on point of that, its graveyard effect is only can be activated once per turn. Like, you can only activate one of these effects per turn. So if you use the first effect, you cannot use the secondary effect, which the secondary effect says that you can move any security force in the main monster zone to any other main monster zone for you. So it's, again, a secondary minor effect, and I don't really understand why it's a harder once per turn on one of these effects, to only use one of them. And the first effect, like I said, is not even that good because it's Call of the Hunted, like really bad. Very gimmicky Call of the Hunted, in my opinion, for the archetype. Could have been done it a little bit better. But the other trap, Security Force Chase, however, which is the new card from Lightning Overdrive, it's actually a lot more powerful. This one is basically a compulsory evacuation device on cracks, because it's bounce cards your opponent control, not monsters, cards, meaning also spells and traps, to their opponent hand, depending on the numbers of security monsters with different names you control. So if you control 4, you can bounce up to 4 cards. Really powerful. Most of the time you're only going to bounce 2, but the fact is you have a choice with that, which is really cool. Its graveyard effect is also very good, which is also guaranteeing it 3 stars in my opinion. And the fact is that it's letting your monsters that basically use an effect to banish a security force card from hand to have the ability to banish this instead. So your Rappa Chiyomaru and your Orifice being able to activate their effects without the cost for banishing a card from hand, making this card really powerful. But that's pretty much does it for the Security Force support, or should I say archetype review, I guess, not support. We didn't really get any new support except from the Lightning Overdrive, but this is the first video we're doing about these guys. Point is, Security Force is an interesting one. They get a very interesting like floodgate-like effect, but the floodgates effects are not really the best. I gotta say, like, they could have done them a little bit more stronger. I think Gravitino's specific like floodgate is probably the best. But as it stands right now, it's just a basic, like, very fun archetype to just, like, help you flood the board, getting a pretty interesting boss monster, and essentially, like, try to make these floodgates effects works. I think it's like a low-tier rogue deck, which I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's a little bit lower to be, like, a very nice and fun in locals. I think it's going to be fun in locals, but it's not, like, going to win locals, in my opinion. But the point is, Archetype is still really cool, and I'm specifically going to build it myself. But that's pretty much it for the review, so hope you guys have enjoyed this review. I'm going to try to make these a little bit shorter, because the fact is, Security Force is an archetype that does take a little bit time to talk about, because it's, how should I say this, have some floodgate-like effects that I need to talk about, so I'm going to try to make reviews a little bit more shorter and straight to the point, and I'm still working on that, so, you know, might going to take a while. Not sure what review I'm going to do next week, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.